flipping over to the carbon side of things, I feel like I want to play the Jimmy Buffett song, When It All Falls Down, because that's really the theme of what's been going on within carbon sheet. Whether it's Chinese prices in orange, European prices in blue, US prices in white, all of them are converging to the downside. And also the spreads between all of them are also tight to a fairly large degree. So much so that it's getting to a point where really importing European product or product from overseas, it's not all that cost competitive these days. So that's part of the reason why I'm beginning to think we kind of are bouncing along somewhere near a bottom, because the import threat is no longer there. So that's something from the supply side of things that I think is going to keep prices somewhat supported from here. Now, famous last words, hopefully nothing else too crazy happens and the bottom falls out. If we also similarly use scrap prices as a proxy for where fair value might be, we've looked at this chart in the past, but this is looking at busheling scrap futures, adding on $300, comparing that to where the US hot roll futures market is. They've pretty much converged. And even in some cases, the futures market is actually at a discount to where scrap plus $300 is. The reason why we use scrap plus 300, ultimately for electric arc furnaces here within North America, they're making steel from scrap in a lot of cases. We're estimating that fixed spread to be, for them to make money, at somewhere around $300. That allows them to cover labor, energy, logistics, things like that. So as I sit here today, there are a number of factors that seem to be suggesting we're nearing the trough. Now, I don't think that necessarily means we have to scream off the lows and head back to 1,000, but it does feel like the momentum to the downside is quickly waning for those factors. And maybe not coincidentally, I think 2 or 3 mills just in the last week or two have already announced $50 or $75 price increases. So some of that might have been to slow the bleed. Some of that might have been because they're looking at some of these same factors where they're saying enough's enough. We're actually getting into a reasonable range. Now, where I've been dead wrong is on the price of steel plate. So steel plate continues to levitate. And we got the CRU numbers just yesterday, and hot roll was down, cold roll was down, galvanized was down, and plate went up. It is, it's got me scratching my head. I will readily wave the white flag and say I give up. I don't know, and I don't have a great explanation for this, except for one thing. My analyst Kevin, who is far better at this work than I am, he pointed this out to me yesterday, that the Dodge Construction Index is screaming right now. And granted, this data is a little lagged. This is as of July 31st is the most recent data point. But perhaps there's something to this story of, given the fact that the plate market is a little smaller, there are fewer players, it's maybe easier to cause extreme tightness within that space relative to carbon sheet. And what do we have going on right now that we didn't have, say, last year? The infrastructure bill. I don't know if you can hear the background noise right now, but as we sit here right now, there are probably 30 rows of plate sitting on the road, and there is massive amounts of construction going outside right here downtown Chicago. There's a real potential that this is just a situation whereby demand is hot. It's a smaller market than carbon sheet, so it's easier to keep it elevated when demand's as strong as it is. And to give a little clarification, the Dodge Construction Index is similar to the PMI data in that it's soft data. It's a survey. It's basically asking people, how do they feel? So it's not exactly representative of construction spending. It's basically, how do those in the construction market feel about things right now? And right now they're feeling pretty darn good. So I don't know. I'm happy to admit that I'm wrong on plate prices. I thought they'd come crashing down much faster. I still think there's probably room for them to come down a bit. But we look at the construction world, we look outside my window, there's a lot going on right now with regards to infrastructure.
It speaks greatly to what Brian Crane told us last month too, right? The limited pool of suppliers and the infrastructure, just the market demand, like you said. I mean, I think those are definitely the factors keeping that.
Yeah, because I mean, if you take a step back and you say, well, construction is hot, that's why plate's hot. I mean, I would potentially make the argument to say, okay, well then steel sheet should also be hot because steel sheet goes into these things as well. But yeah, I think to Brian's point and to the point you just mentioned, because plate is smaller, it's just easier to kind of push it around, I suppose.